How you doing? I am Dr. Ben Newman. I am a coronavirus researcher with over 20 years experience working on these awful little viruses, wonderful little viruses. Today, let's not talk about corona. Let's talk about flu because that's what everybody's talking about. They're like, corona, what's that? Flu is the next big thing. And to some extent, it is. And to a larger extent, we're falling for the old "Hey, what's that behind you?" And then something bad happens trick. Yeah. So here we go. Now, I'm going to use the US version of this site, which is the FluView CDC. You can find it at cdc.gov/flu/weekly/index.htm. There is a similar version of this that runs out of the UK. There are similar versions in a lot of other countries. So you can find a more localized version. Look for influenza tracker is what I generally Google, and then put the name of the country you want in there. Or put that in the native language. Yeah, and yeah, chances are it'll come up. All right, so what's going on with the flu? Well, a lot of stuff's going on with the flu, and it's neatly captured here. The CDC's version I like because it gives you the bare statistics, and I can do a lot with those. I know where to look for the things that I want. The UK's version is more like a government report. So they put everything out there and they have a lot of really sort of creative ways of looking at it. They're like looking for Google searches for flu remedies and stuff like that because those correlate with the actual number of cases. There's quite a bunch of that in that version, and it's a nice way to try to figure out, am I missing some of the data? Like, how much of the data am I missing? It's kind of like the now famous one-star Yankee Candle reviews that come up every time there's a COVID spike in the US. People love their Yankee Candles. For those who don't know, it's a very stinky slash nice smelling slash potent little candle, and they come in all kinds of punchy in the face obnoxious flavors and some that aren't so bad, I guess. But they're very strong, and whenever COVID comes and infects people's noses and they lose their sense of smell, you start getting all these one-star reviews saying like, wow, I bought a Yankee Candle, it doesn't smell like anything, it's not like usual. Yeah, must be a bad batch this year. So yeah, I would look forward to that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, watch wherever the heck people order these little stink bombs from. Anyway, let's talk influenza. And so here we go, CDC tracker. Headline number is right there. When we are out of flu season, normally you would see something like 0 to 1% positive for flu. And these are of tests that are being run. So these are doctors that think you probably have flu and give you a test. When we are out of flu season, the answer is usually you have something else, but the doctor's trying to rule out flu. And so very few of those come back positive. When we're in flu season, it's going to go up to something like 15, maybe even 20% of the tests that people take are going to be positive. So you can see from this that we're about 3/4 of the way to the peak, I hope. Yeah. I hope it stops there or stops sooner than that. That would be fine as well. I'm recording this on the 22nd of November. You'll see that they last updated it. They update it once a week. So there you go. All right. And it's got hospitalizations and deaths and stuff like that. Very nice little headline numbers up there. What this does is it sort of compares this year's peak to last year's peak. And so this is like a 1-year interval. And during this 1-year interval, we're up from where we were last year. If this was a normal size peak at a normal time, we would see the two ends of this be roughly at the same height. So, all right. Here it's showing you, okay, what's causing the problems. And so mostly it seems to be red bar, and red bar is H3N2. So this is the flu that is not related to the pandemic, don't call it swine, but H1N1 influenza that first appeared in '09. Remember? That was a simpler time back in '09. Um, so we're getting a little bit of that H1N1 coming up now, although for the rest of the year it was pretty much extinct. And so H1N1 is one of the big drivers of this sort of seasonal flu. And then we have a bunch of influenza A, haven't done a subtype, so it's either the orange or the red, and we haven't identified it. That's there. All the other colors that you can't see on this map or that make up the tiniest little bars at the bottom, those are like flu B. Influenza B really suffered as a result of the anti-COVID masking in particular, and it is nearly extinct. Flu B used to be a lot more of a problem than it is now. One of the major lineages, I believe, is extinct or functionally extinct. Yeah, and the other one is on the ropes. So good job, everybody. We did something. Like all that masking wasn't for nothing. Then you go down, it's giving you more details on exactly which one. This is one of the key graphs that I always look at, and you can follow it week by week. And so here's where we are. The little red triangles show us where we are. These are the last few flu seasons. So green, blue, and light blue, those are like normal flu seasons occurring at the normal time. Pink is the lockdown flu season when there was no flu season. There was a very low amount of transmission and no peak whatsoever because people were not getting out and mingling and, spreading those respiratory droplets to everybody else at the dinner table. Last year, 21-22 flu season, we had this really short, not very big flu season that kind of started at the normal time and then just crashed. And it's not clear exactly why that happened, but then at two other points during the year, at that point and that point, it gets really close to crossing the line. And when we cross the line, that's when we say that, okay, it's a flu epidemic. And you can see here we are out here. And so this is what people have been talking about. They say, wow, for this time of year, we have this many cases, and we should be having this many cases. And so this is the worst flu season ever. Yeah. Which I guess could be if your glass is half empty and I'm going to smash it on the ground because I don't like empty glasses kind of person. But what I'm seeing is a fairly normal sort of slope. So it's going up at the usual rate, like when flu rises, this is how it rises. And it's leveling off at about the right position because normally they seem to level off right about in this range. And so it looks like a normal flu season, but it's shifted earlier. So instead of, it should be starting around week 50, and it's starting around week 40 is when it's crossing the line for the first time. So that's the difference. We have a normal looking flu season about 10 weeks early is what it's looking like now, which is bad for sure, but it's not, it's not everything. Who's getting the flu? Mostly little kids, which is rough, and then a lot of older people. The gray line, which I don't know, that's a bit ageist, isn't it? Is for 65 plus people. And you can see all the other age groups are these lines that are basically flat lining. And so there's basically been no flu in those people. You get a little bump of it here, but probably these people have more flu than is showing up on the chart. These are the people that are getting really sick from the flu, or the very young and the very old, which is unfortunately the awful mechanics of the flu. That's just how it works. That's what it does. Where's the flu in the United States right now? Well, yeah, the flu is hanging out in the sunny south. If you looked a few weeks earlier, it would be just sort of down in Florida, Louisiana. It's starting to burn out there a little bit, and it's been creeping its way up the East Coast. It's still really low in the sort of mountain west, but it's on its way there, yeah. Not that many people, but this is a sort of a per capita ratio, and it's coming. It's coming. So you can watch the gradually spreading wave. So in long-term care, like nursing homes, for example, there you go. We've got a little spike there. Comparing cumulative hospitalizations. And so we're high for this time of year, but we're not high overall yet. This is like adding up all the hospitalizations in a normal flu season. So those are sort of normal years. Here's a really bad year, 2017-18. And so, yeah, things will get worse, yeah, because we're just getting toward the peak of flu. And it's after people get infected, maybe like a week later or something like that, then you start to see the hospitalizations really racking up normally with viruses like this. Hospitalization. Okay, and now we're into the good ones. This is mortality. This is deaths. And so you can see the little thing at the bottom, these little tiny windows, which you can't even see, but there's a little tiny peak right there, and there's just the tiniest little hint of a peak in the corner, I think. I'm not even sure if it's like 1 pixel or if it's not even there. That's flu deaths. The blue thing is reported COVID deaths. The red thing is probably the total number of deaths. And so you can see it's weirdly the exact same shape as the COVID deaths. And so basically, COVID is a big driver of deaths from respiratory, like pneumonia-like causes. And here we go. Yeah. So of the people that died in the past week, you got 926 with COVID, and you got 70 listed for influenza. And remember, this is peak influenza season. And so we're at, what is that, like 14, 15 times as many COVID deaths as flu deaths here at the peak of flu season. So, and this is also a period of very low in air quotes, COVID in the US. So, yeah, you see that COVID is still a gigantic problem. It's just that we've kind of taken our eye off the ball and we're looking over here at the shiny new flu stats, which are great. Yeah, it's just that that's not the big problem. That's sort of smacking us over the head. That is still COVID. And the other thing that's worth checking is for each country, or for some countries that are more forthcoming with data, you can find a site that'll track the number of people that have got the new bivalent booster. In the U.S. Earlier this week, I think it was at about 31%, 33.1 million, sorry, which is about, it's a little less than 10% of the country that has had the booster. And without the booster, basically, you are likely to run into somebody with Omicron at some point in this holiday season and likely to get it. So, yeah. That's kind of where we are. Flu is a problem, but it is a much smaller problem compared to its big sister, COVID. Yeah, it was carrying a big stick, and yeah. Stay safe this year, because I think a lot of people aren't gonna, unfortunately. Yeah, so, all right. There you go. Ending on a downer. As always, thanks very much. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.